All right. Now, FDR is going to defeat Al Johnson in 1936 easily. Part of the problem was Al Johnson was a supporter of FDR's programs, so he didn't have much room to stand on or legs to stand on. But criticism of the first New Deal is going to start to grow as the second New Deal picks up. All right, the failure of the New Deal to end the Depression led to growing frustrations. People want instant gratification. From 33 to 34, the New Deal focused primarily on intermediate problems and did little to help the unskilled workers and sharecroppers. All right, 1935, Roosevelt is going to shift his approach from relief to reform. All right, so if you haven't received relief, you're going to have growing discontent towards Roosevelt. By 35, signs of discontent with the New Deal were evidence as there were three major critics, and these were called demagogues. All right, Father Charles Coughlin called for nationalizing U.S. banks. He used anti-Semitism in the radio. He was a Catholic priest or former Catholic priest that really was very socialist. All right, almost Nazi-like. All right. Francis Townsend was a doctor who appealed to the elderly with his idea of a $200 a month payment plan to anyone over 60 in order to stimulate the economy. This obviously will lead to the Social Security Act. Obviously, he's over 60 right there, so he wanted some money himself. But he does get a lot of attention to the elderly, from the elderly. His last one was a senator from Louisiana, Huey Long, also known as Kingfish. All right, Huey Long was a convict at one time. He was a con artist, and he somehow comes to power in Louisiana through a political machine, and he proposes this idea called share the wealth plan. He wants to take from the rich 100% tax on all personal income over $1 million. Okay, he wants to give to the poor, give every American $2,500 per year. So this was extremely socialist. So he was being attacked by the far left and the far right. And Huey Long eventually will be killed by a guy who, I guess, politically tied to mafia, sort of. All right, so there's the Kingfish, and there's a good quote from him. All right. Popularities of the opposition voices showed the need for the New Deal to do more. So it really kind of helped push him to go further. All right, so by the 1934 midterm elections, Democrats increased their control and initiated the second New Deal. Okay. All right, so the first act of the second New Deal was the WPA, which is the most comprehensive direct assistance program ever. The government's going to hire 10 million Americans to try to stimulate the economy. Giving people jobs and giving them something to do is going to prevent conflict and disturbance at home. All right, so the WPA is going to create building projects, funding artists, pump $10 billion into the economy. All right. So again, it makes the Depression bearable. It doesn't solve or get America out of the Depression. All right, see there, that's a great idea, a great quote there. It cared less about what got done as long as work was done. All right. Health initiatives. So here are just some propaganda from the time period. Here's the Arts Project. They invested a lot in art and children and the youth agencies. Murals downtown. where WPA. There's a mural in Brunswick, I believe, that's a part of the WPA. This is a really big time period with former slaves because a lot of them were about to die off. So there's a lot of oral histories. University of North Carolina has a huge section of oral histories that are tape recorded from former slaves. All right. The other, I guess, big act was the Social Security Act, which is the first U.S. welfare program for aged, disabled, and unemployed. All right. Liberal critics argued that Social Security did not do enough, whereas conservatives argued that it violated individualism, self-reliance. Dealing with the labor issue, Wagner Act created the first, the National Labor Relations Board, oversee the management affairs, dealt with the unions, negotiated for workers, things like that. Also, the Fair Labor Standards set the first minimum wage and maximum hours. $0.40 per hour, 40 hours per week. Now, conclusions. The New Deal is made up of three parts: relief, recovery, reform. The New Deal is most successful in providing immediate relief. Again, it does not bring an end to the economic depression, but it provides psychological reform, I guess you could say. It helps the people feel like something's being done. It gives them opportunities to show that they're trying. All right.